All right, welcome back, everybody. Today, we are going to be taking a deep dive into something that is absolutely crucial for any successful ABA team. And that is how supervisors can create a truly supportive environment for their staff.
Okay, yeah.
Because, let's face it, when our staff feel valued and appreciated, it directly translates into better outcomes for the clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we've got the Supervisor's Guidebook with us today as our main source.
Yeah.
And this thing is, it's packed with some really interesting strategies for making recognition meaningful, not just like a throwaway kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that just saying good job every now and then
Yeah.
doesn't quite cut it, right? We're looking at how to make recognition like a core part of our supervisory style.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so the guidebook kicks things off by highlighting, the power of positive feedback. I mean, pretty standard stuff, right?
Right.
But it really emphasizes the HOW. Like, how do we deliver that feedback is important.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just about what you say, but when you say it and how you say it.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Frequency, immediacy, and specificity.
Okay.
So the more frequent the feedback is, the better. Ideally, you're giving it immediately after a staff member demonstrates like whatever the desired behavior is.
Okay.
And it needs to be specific.
Oh.
So instead of just good job, you might say something like, I really appreciated how you adapted that activity to meet the client's needs today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense. It's like you're giving them, instead of a pat on the back, you're giving them like a roadmap or like a detailed kind of, this is what you did well.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is where I think those like big Employee of the Month awards and things like that, they kind of fall short, right?
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. Those have their place, but they're not really impacting like day-to-day work.
Yeah. It's not changing how you're approaching each task, each interaction.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're really after is this idea of special recognition. So what does that actually mean?
Well, think of it as going above and beyond like your everyday feedback to really make your staff feel valued, and appreciated.
Okay.
And the guidebook kind of breaks it down into two main types. Formal awards, things like certificates or plaques, even gift cards or performance lotteries, and then informal actions. And so those are the little things that supervisors can do just on a more regular basis to show their appreciation.
Okay, so it's like a two-pronged approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But before we jump into like specific examples of those two things,
All right. Yeah.
There's one thing that really stood out to me in the guidebook that I thought was important, is that it emphasizes that any type of recognition, whether formal or informal, needs to be based on clear, observable performance criteria.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be...
That's such a crucial point because you want to make sure that your staff understand exactly what they need to do to earn recognition.
Yeah.
This keeps things fair and transparent, but it also avoids any perceptions of favoritism, which can be really demotivating.
Oh, I've definitely seen that.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know what the rules of the game are.
Yeah.
So how can you, be expected to win?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all about setting clear expectations and then reinforcing those desired behaviors through the special recognition.
Okay. So are we ready to get into some of these creative recognition actions?
Yes, let's do
From
it.
the guidebook? I'm all ears.
Okay. All right. So imagine this.
Yeah.
You call a team meeting.
Okay.
And everyone is, a little nervous, thinking, uh-oh, what did we do wrong?
Right.
But instead of a reprimand, it's a special recognition meeting.
Ooh.
You call out specific staff members and praise their accomplishments in front of the whole team.
Oh, I love that. Especially in a workplace that might have like kind of a negative vibe already.
Right.
It's just like this breath of fresh air.
Yes, exactly. It shifts the whole energy, and shows that you're paying attention to their hard work.
Yeah, yeah.
And speaking of shifting energy, there's this idea of taking home the goods.
Okay, taking home the goods. Tell me more about that. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it's all about strategically timing your positive feedback.
Okay.
So imagine you have a staff member who's had a particularly challenging day.
Okay.
Maybe they're feeling stressed or burnt out. Right before they clock out, you pull them aside and say something like, hey, I really noticed how you handled that difficult interaction with the client today. Your patience and problem-solving skills were amazing.
Oh, that's great, because then they leave work feeling good about themselves and carry that feeling into their evening.
Exactly. It's just a simple but effective way to end the day on a high note.
Yeah.
And on a similar note, there's also the idea of receiving the goods at home. Now, this one requires a bit more tact. Imagine, like, contacting a staff member at home with good news or a commendation.
Oh, okay.
It turns what could be a dreaded phone call from work into a positive experience.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about flipping the script.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm already starting to see how much like thought goes into some of these special recognition strategies.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Wow, okay.
The guidebook is full of even more creative ideas, each with its own unique way of making staff feel valued and appreciated.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on these first few actions. Like, what resonates with you the most?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm really liking all these actions, honestly, and it's making me rethink like how I approach staff recognition.
Yeah.
I think I'm especially drawn to this idea of like turn potentially negative situations into positive ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like taking those everyday moments that could easily be like sources of stress or frustration and injecting them with like appreciation and encouragement.
Yeah, it's such a powerful concept, and it really speaks to the idea that recognition doesn't always have to be this like big formal event. Sometimes it's those small, unexpected gestures that make the biggest impact.
Right.
Like, for example, saying good things behind their back.
Okay, yeah, that one definitely caught my attention too. I'm a little hesitant about that one though.
Okay.
Isn't there a risk that it comes across as like insincere if the person never actually hears the praise directly?
You know, that's a great point, and it highlights the importance of being genuine and intentional with this approach.
Okay.
We're not talking about gossiping or spreading rumors.
Right.
It's about authentically acknowledging someone's contributions and doing it in a way that reinforces those positive behaviors for the whole team. So, for example, you might mention in a meeting, like, I was really impressed with how Sarah handled that challenging parent interaction yesterday. She remained calm, professional, and really advocated for the client's needs.
Okay, yeah, I see how that could be effective. It's like you're modeling a culture of appreciation and giving others permission to do the same.
Exactly, yeah. And it also creates this ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Where the staff member who's being praised might hear about it indirectly, which can be even more impactful than hearing it directly from you. So they're kind of getting this positive feedback from multiple sources.
How interesting.
Reinforcing that sense of value within the team.
That's cool. Yeah. This is making me realize like there's so many subtle ways to just kind of weave recognition into our everyday interactions.
Absolutely. And speaking of subtle ways to make a big impact, let's talk about stand-up supervision.
Oh, yes. Stand-up supervision. That one really resonated with me. Basically, it's about supervisors stepping up and defending their staff, especially when executives might have like inaccurate or negative impressions of someone's performance.
Right.
I've definitely seen situations where like information gets passed through so many different channels that it ends up completely distorted.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and it's so damaging to staff morale.
Yeah.
So that's why it's crucial for supervisors to have those like really open lines of communication with the executives and be willing to advocate for their team members.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean like blindly defending every action.
Right.
It's about providing context, highlighting strengths, and just ensuring that the feedback is fair and accurate.
Yeah. It sounds like stand-up supervision requires a delicate balance of like diplomacy and assertiveness.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you need to have those strong relationships with executives, but also be prepared to like stand your ground when necessary.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's about being a strong advocate for your team, but also maintaining like a collaborative and respectful relationship with those in the higher positions.
Yeah, that's good. This is all making me think about my own like supervisory style.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that like I think I'm pretty good at the routine positive feedback, but I could definitely step up my game when it comes to this special recognition stuff, especially that concept of like turning negativity into a positive. I think that's so brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway for all of us.
Yeah.
The Supervisor's Guidebook offers such a rich toolkit of strategies, and it's really up to us to find the ones that resonate most with our team and workplace culture, right?
Right, yeah.
And remember, a lot of these actions, they don't require a ton of time or resources.
Right.
You know, a simple special recognition meeting or a heartfelt taking home the goods moment, can make a huge difference.
It's funny you mentioned special recognition meetings. It actually reminds me of a story from my early days as an RBT.
Oh.
For those who are unfamiliar, RBT is a registered behavior technician. So basically the hands-on implementer of ABA therapy plans.
Right.
Anyway, I had this one supervisor who was amazing at turning those like potentially awkward meetings into positive experiences.
Oh, I'd love to hear about that. Tell me more.
Okay, so I was working with a particularly challenging client, and I was feeling honestly pretty burnt out. And one day, my supervisor called a meeting with me and a couple of the RBTs. And we were all kind of like nervous, thinking like, uh-oh, what did we do wrong or something?
Right.
But she completely surprised us. She started the meeting by acknowledging how hard we'd all been working. And then she proceeded to like praise each of us individually for specific things that we were doing well.
That must have been such a relief. What a great example of like turning what could have been a negative experience into a positive one.
Yeah.
Did she use any other creative recognition techniques?
She did. She was really good at incorporating relief of duty into her supervisory style.
Oh, that's a fantastic one. Can you give an example of how she used that?
Yeah. So this particular client I was working with, he was prone to like really intense meltdowns.
Yeah.
And it was emotionally draining. I was starting to feel, the strain. And one day my supervisor noticed that I was looking, particularly stressed.
Right.
And she offered to like take over with the client for a few hours that afternoon so I could catch a break.
That's such a good example of how relief of duty can be used to like show empathy and provide tangible support.
Yes.
It sends a clear message that you understand the challenges your staff are facing and are willing to step in and help. Did it make a difference for you?
It totally did. It gave me a chance to kind of recharge and come back, feeling refreshed and more motivated.
Yeah.
And it also just made me feel so appreciated and supported. It's amazing how like such a simple gesture can have such a big impact.
It really speaks to the power of recognizing and addressing not just like the work that our staff are doing, but also like the emotional toll that it can sometimes take.
Right.
And it highlights how these special recognition actions can be even more impactful when they're personalized and tailored to like the individual staff member's needs.
Absolutely. And, speaking of tailoring recognition to individual needs, I'm curious about your thoughts on performance lotteries. They seem like a fun and unique way to recognize performance.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if there are any potential downsides to them.
Yeah, performance lotteries can definitely add an element of like excitement and gamification to the workplace.
Right.
But you're right to consider the potential drawbacks. One challenge, as the guidebook pointed out, is that only a small proportion of staff are actually going to receive the reward, even if many staff are meeting the performance criteria. Yeah. It's like the office version of a scratch-off ticket.
Yeah.
Except the prize is better work performance.
Exactly. And if you're consistently meeting the goals but never winning the lottery, it could start to feel a little demotivating.
Exactly, yeah. And some staff might view lotteries as a bit I don't know, gimmicky or even condescending if they're not implemented, thoughtfully.
Yeah.
So it's really crucial to make sure that the performance criteria are clear and fair and directly tied to meaningful outcomes. And it's also important to consider whether the rewards being offered are actually desirable and motivating for your staff.
So it sounds like lotteries might be a good fit for some teams and some workplace cultures, but definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. And it's always a good idea to get feedback from your staff about their preferences and what types of recognition they find most meaningful. Speaking of different approaches, I'm curious to hear your take on this receiving the goods at home thing. Such a powerful concept, but I wonder if it could backfire if not handled sensitively.
Yeah, it's definitely one that requires careful consideration. While the intention is good, to turn a potentially negative experience to a positive one.
Right.
It's important to be mindful of boundaries and respect staff members' personal time. I think the key is to make sure it's like a brief and positive interaction focused solely on acknowledging their accomplishment.
That's a great point, and it highlights the importance of like knowing your team and understanding their individual preferences.
Yeah.
What might be a welcome surprise for one person could feel, intrusive to another.
Yeah.
So communication and awareness are key.
This deep dive is giving me so much to think about in terms of my own supervisory styles. Like, a whole new world of possibilities has opened up.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, creating a positive and supportive work environment is an ongoing process.
Right.
It's about constantly learning and experimenting and adapting your approach to meet the evolving needs of your team.
And speaking of evolving needs, there's one topic we haven't touched on yet that's often at the forefront of discussions about staff motivation.
Right.
And that is the role of money.
Well, as our trusty Supervisor's Guidebook points out, it's not quite that simple. Money definitely plays a role, but it's not like the be-all and end-all of staff motivation.
Okay, so spill the tea. What's the real deal with money and motivation?
Well, think of it this way. Compensation is definitely a factor when someone's deciding, do I want to take this job?
Right.
Do I want to stay in this job? We all have bills to pay, right?
Right, yeah.
But when it comes to day-to-day performance, money doesn't always have that, immediate driving impact.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I've definitely experienced that myself. Getting a raise is exciting, of course.
Right.
But it didn't necessarily change how I, approached my work each day.
Exactly. And the Guidebook highlights a key reason for that. Paychecks, even with the raise, they typically come on a fixed schedule.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks, monthly, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it's not this constant immediate reinforcement like we see with those special recognition actions that we've been talking about.
So if not about just throwing money at the problem,
right,
there needs to be a more strategic, nuanced approach.
Absolutely. And even when monetary rewards are used, the Guidebook really emphasizes that they should be tied to specific observable achievements. It's about making that link between effort and reward crystal clear.
Right.
So for example, instead of a general bonus for good work,
you might say something like, if we meet our target for client goal progress this quarter, everyone gets a bonus.
Okay, so it's all about setting those clear expectations and then using the money to reinforce those desired outcomes.
Exactly.
But it sounds like ultimately those day-to-day special recognition actions,
yes,
are really the key to creating a truly supportive and motivating environment.
I couldn't agree more. Things like the taking home the goods strategy, those unexpected special recognition meetings, even saying good things behind their back.
Yeah.
Those are the actions that really resonate with staff. They boost morale and ultimately lead to those better client outcomes.
Yeah, it all comes back to making staff feel valued and seen and appreciated for the work they do every single day.
Exactly, and it's about creating a workplace culture where recognition and support are just woven into those daily interactions.
This whole deep dive has been honestly such an eye-opener for me.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit now for creating a positive and supportive work environment for my team. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway?
Honestly, for me, it's the realization that special recognition isn't just a nice to have,
right.
It's a must have. It's an essential ingredient for effective supervision, and it has a direct impact on both staff well-being and ultimately the quality of care that we provide to our clients.
Absolutely. And the best part is so many of these actions are pretty easy to implement, Right. They don't require a ton of time or resources. It's really about just shifting our mindset and making a conscious effort to acknowledge and celebrate the hard work and dedication of the people on our teams.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through this insightful deep dive into the world of special recognition.
My pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, we hope you found this episode valuable and feel inspired to put some of these strategies into action.
Even a small gesture of appreciation can go a long way in creating a more positive and supportive work environment.
Keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep those positive vibes flowing.